Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome back to F1 Manager 2023. This is episode number 12. Yes, we are back after a 2-week hiatus, but things have changed. Not as severely as you thought, based on what you might be seeing beside me here, but bear with me for a moment as I catch you up over the last few laps of the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi. So here's what's transpired, especially if you didn't catch the very end of the last episode. My save game file was completely corrupted. The game had gotten quite buggy. There was a lot of crashes. There was infrequent crashes to begin with. There was an update to the game yesterday. So far, so good. Things are feeling good on that front compared to how they had been. There was a lot of issues that were kind of carrying out from time to time. But the modded database came with even more, to the point where 50% of the time that I go to enter a race, the game was crashing. But then that save was corrupted. My backup save was corrupted. My backup save was back to just before I had modified it and brought in Florsch and Gatti to the team. A third of the season still to go. So I have played out that third of a season back with Logan Sargent, back with Hunter Yeany within the team, not messing around with the modified database any longer. And I'm back to the point where we were at. Now, in terms of car development, in terms of how the season has transpired, not much has really changed. It was late enough in the season that things have carried out pretty much the same way they would have. The big difference being that Logan Sargent isn't always right at the back of the grid, where Hunter Yeany is. Now, Hunter Yeany today, he's a half minute down on everybody else. Mostly because of poor timing. Poor timing being there was a virtual safety car at an inopportune time for us, but one for everybody else. Now, for Logan Sargent, things actually kind of went his way once. It didn't go his way the other time. The one time it went his way was a safety car early on where everybody else pit, but unlike Hunter Yeany, who was a little bit off the back and only gained a few positions, Logan Sargent came out of that safety car, not pitting because I was on a hard, medium, soft strategy, and everybody else was on softs or mediums at the start of the race. They all pit and came out on hard compound under that safety car, and Sargent jumped all the way to 4th position. The track position we gained was phenomenal. By the time we did end up pitting, he had dropped to about 12th on the grid and had definitely lost time and didn't have the pace that they had. But it set him up pretty well to where now, at the end of the race, he's still sitting P13, hanging on ahead of DeVries, ahead of Zhou, ahead of the field. It's good. Things are good on that front. It's gone well. 13th is still not a great position here in the last couple of laps, but it's not bad. Managed to finish 12th on a previous race as well. We've had some okay results. Meanwhile, Hunter Yeany, in one previous race, managed to finish ahead of 2 cars. That was an opportunistic safety car that we pit and others did not. That was in Vegas, actually, the last race. And he put on the softs, and was able to beat the 2 cars that he was close behind to begin with, the 2 Alfa Romeos, and get a decent result. So it's not all bad. But here's the thing. I'm back with Sargent and Yeany in the team as we go to wrap up this season. But with that update, one other thing has happened. And this is good, because that modded database and that 50% chance of the game crashing every time and having to fall back on a previous save and then having that one also get locked into a dead end, the chances of that were way too high. But we're not going to have to deal with it. Here's why. Logan Sargent is going to be remaining with the team as we enter the new season. He is our safety net. He is our chance to beat some other drivers, to beat some other teams, to be semi-competitive. He's a weaker driver. That's why I didn't keep Albon around. Albon's too strong. Albon's too competitive.
That's your last
Albon
lap,
puts
last
us
lap.
a leg up on some of the competition. Sargent doesn't. He's one of the weakest drivers in the field, if not the weakest driver in the field in terms of ratings. And then there's that big jump down to Yini. Well, don't worry. Yini is got an ending contract and has a replacement. Part of that update that came out yesterday, they have fixed what should have been already in the first place, as Sargent gets lapped here right at the end, so this is going to be his final lap. Is that Verstappen that's lapped him? I think it might have been. Or is that Perez? No, that's Perez that went by. We were already a lap down. We're on the final lap here. But they fixed what was essentially a bug. Sophia Flörsch, as we noted earlier in this series, Sophia Flörsch had one season, left through COVID, and then came back. She's in her second F3 season. By rule, that's 2 seasons. Doesn't matter that they're split apart. The rule that they have set up for this is you must have, this is their points system, you must have 2 years of F3 or F2 experience. Period. That makes you eligible to sign for an F1 team. So Flörsch is going to take Hunter Yini's seat to start the season, and I'm redirecting my focus for this series now. I'm going to keep Sargent around for a while. If and when I have another eligible driver, I will probably go ahead, depending on circumstances, go ahead and sign another female driver to that second car. But the long-term objective of this series is now going to be getting Sophia Flörsch into the race seat and winning a championship with Sophia Flörsch. Not with the teammate. Teammate is there for a safety net. Make us a little more competitive in the short term as she gets more and more competitive, as her rating comes up more and more as a driver. And without having to do this with a modded database, it's going to make life so much easier. Hopefully we don't have those crashes anymore. But it's going to make a big difference. Here, Logan Sargent has managed to finish in P13. And again, I think he can make us just about competitive enough in the coming season to keep our job while we focus primarily on the development of Sophia Flörsch. But this is a season in the books, and now we can proceed with further development of the car. I've got some research projects ongoing, and then we'll be heading into the new year. As I mentioned, things were largely unchanged. Leclerc still wins the Drivers' Championship. Ferrari still wins the Constructors' Championship, though it definitely got close down the last few races, with Red Bull being the better team down the stretch. And maybe that was potentially a balancing thing. There was balancing mentioned. I don't know if that was teams being altered, but I think it might have only to do with new saves and not ongoing ones. I think Red Bull just outdeveloped Ferrari at the end of the season here. But Aston Martin takes third, Mercedes fourth, Alpine fifth, Haas claims sixth, though McLaren really closed that gap in the final races. They scored a lot of points down the stretch, but not in the final race. And AlphaTauri themselves went from 1 point to 10 over the last few races, and somehow even managed to have 2 fastest laps over the course of this season. We also managed to get one, by the way, but we do finish ahead of Alfa Romeo, so that is a 9th place finish in the Constructors. It is a spot lower than what was expected, so we will take a bit of a knock, but right now we are considered comfortable according to the board, as we've had enough results over the course of the season, so we should still have our job here. Fastest pit stop standings at the end of the year, we end up with 49 points, and nearly all of those points, and by nearly all, I really mean nearly all of those points, I think all but one of those points came in a single race, which was Monaco. Monaco only saw 3 or 4 cars pit the entire race because we were in the rain for that one, so the change of tires was not necessary. Most of the cars stayed out for the entire race on the same compound. A couple cars pit because of damage, which means they had long pit stops, I pit each car at an opportune time during the race to be able to push when we had big gaps, and we benefited from it. It did work out for us in more ways than one. We got the first and second fastest pit stop and picked up, I think, 48 of the 49 points we ended up getting in the fastest pit stop challenge. So we never cracked the top 10. It's similar scoring to what you get with actual race results with that 25 down to 1. And so, yeah, we got a 25 and 18. So we got 43 points. So we did get 6 points the rest of the season there. So it wasn't just that one. But we only cracked that top 10 a couple times, and only early in the season. We kept our mistakes down to a minimum. That helped. We were consistent in that part. But improving the actual time of our pit crew was a little challenging, and part of that came down to our pit crew manager. Not a terrible rating, but not a great rating. So we're going to have to see that develop to help our pit crew develop as we continue forward in this one. Consistent 2.3s, 2.4s here by the end of the season. In F2, Daruvala took the championship ahead of Pourchaire. Pourchaire is the driver that I went on and won a championship with in F1 Manager 22. And Iwasa took third. MP Motorsport ended up comfortably as the Constructors' Championship in F2. I'm loving that we're able to continue training right on through December, though in the past game you'd always have a reset at the new year that would see things drop down in terms of their quality, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens here. But we're going to at least head into the break with a big drop. 20 points coming off in terms of the chance of mistake, but also taking off a full 10th of a second in the estimated pit stop time, and seeing a small increase to the car building. I always pull away from that one to work on the other two. The car building, for me, is not a big deal. Your race is already ruined if you're taking damage and forced to take a pit stop and swap out a wing. We are in a state where we can't afford to have a ruined race and be able to recover from that. We're not a championship contender who can have a mistake, go to the back of the grid, say Zandvoort real life, Mercedes, tactical error in the first 3 laps with the rain. Hamilton's all the way down to 20th. He recovers phenomenally to, 6th place? Great recovery drive. They've got the 3rd or 4th best car, arguably. It's a competitive car, so getting back up to that position took a heck of a drive from Hamilton, but also a much better rest of the race tactically from the Mercedes team. Now, here, we're not in a state for that. We are already at the back of the grid, so any mistake is just going to flat out ruin our race, period. So saving 3 seconds of repair time, not a big deal. Every pit stop being a 10th of a second faster or 2/10 of a second faster or without mistakes is going to make a whole lot of races more competitive for us, and that's why I focus on those. I don't want the car building to get worse. I do want it to slowly get better, but it is a very low concern for me. In all, I squeezed 6 research projects in right at the end of the year, including a late one that started in December itself, but we were able to add extra engineers to it, not put any extra emphasis on it, and just keep a plain one. But even then, you're still looking at about 1.5% gained in every area of the chassis. Well worth it to me to squeeze something in like that at minimal cost and make progress on the car. And here we go. We are at the end of the season. We finished 8th, 49 for the fastest pit stop award. That's worth $3 million, so that's nice. No points for Hunter Yini, none for Logan Sargent. No points for the team, but we do finish 9th. Our team rating, so we do end up failing the objective for the year. This was the part I was nervous about. We finished 9th instead of 8th, and we definitely don't have our long-term objective happening. My rating does drop a bit because of it, but the team rating is going to go up a little. Board confidence does remain high. It was very high, but it does remain high, and we pick up $1.5 million for that. Only 2 changes for the coming season. One is a pole position bonus point, and the other was a minor technical aerodynamic change. High speed is the primary one at 30%, medium speed being affected at 20% decreases, and a 10% loss in low speed cornering. And that affects the front and rear wings, the suspension, and the underfloor. As we go for the turn of the year, we're going to have 27.6 million right now. We'll see what the finances do with that, but that gives us plenty to take care of whatever contracts we need to take care of, engine contracts and whatnot, as we enter the new season. And then we can immediately, depending on where our funding is, put some of that into a facilities upgrade right away at the start of the new year. Included in the update that just came yesterday is the option to switch teams. We're not going to have to worry about that here, as our new season target is to finish 8th again. That is disappointing, but we've also got 2 years to get that 50% rate of scoring points. It's going to be really tough. But having Logan Sargent still with the team can and should help us out with that. Hopefully we're still ahead of Alfa Romeo, and hopefully we can challenge either Haas or AlphaTauri here early on in this season, at least with Logan Sargent. We only need one driver to be ahead of them while we bring Sophia Flörsch along for the next season or more. One thing about the strategy that I'm employing that's going to give me a kind of cheeky advantage is that I can turn certain things like driver appearances in favor of supporting Sophia Flörsch in her development, but keeping us well-funded as a team. Logan Sargent is not somebody we need to develop rapidly. Therefore, I can maximize his media appearances, keep Sophia Flörsch away from the media, which of course in real life, we all know that would go the opposite direction. That's how the world turns these days, as wrong as it is. But putting it all on Logan Sargent and maximizing the appearances can take us from 2 million to 6 million for the year. So it's an extra $4 million over the course of the year. And Logan Sargent, their development is paused a bit more often, so it slows the development down, which is something we want in this series, right? We don't want him to become a dominant driver. Well, I'd have to move on. I'd have to sign somebody else if that becomes the case. I want him to help us be competitive, but nothing more than that. Just enough to help us keep our job, really. So Logan Sargent allowing us to make an extra $4 million and slow his development down while helping maximize the development of Flörsch is a win-win for us. Following the same principle, our race weekend driver appearances for Logan Sargent only, 22 appearances, again, reducing their control performance rating. Definitely not a great thing. And actually at 1.7 million, I'm not sure that one's worth it. We're going to cancel that, keep that one off. But that brings us to a grand total of 101 million for the year, which is certainly not bad. It's going to be a lump sum of 17.8 million up front, and our income per race is going to be about $500,000 better than it was last season. Another reason to hang on to some of that money up front, our prize money is minimal as we only finished in 9th. Our sponsor funding, that lump sum, I backed off to spread it out throughout the year a little bit, which means we only got that 17 million as opposed to maybe a 22, 23-ish that we could have gotten had I set up the financing a little bit differently. But again, ultimately, it's more when you spread it out over the year than when you try to lump sum it at the beginning of the year. The board payment was okay. I mean, 6 million, hey, that's a lot of money. But facilities did not generate much income in terms of off-season, and they do have a fair bit of cost behind them. The staff has a bit of cost. The car development as we enter the new year, 30 million. That is a huge sum. The entry fee for a team in Formula One, just $500,000 there. But ultimately, our outgoing was more than our incoming, so we are actually decreasing in our balance just a bit, bringing us back down to 21 million. But again, that's why you've got to have that extra money. We have a negative offsetting balance here. We lost nearly 6 million just to enter the season, and we have not even taken care of our engine for the coming season. Here is the car development entering the new year. I did get one chassis research project completed right at the end of the season. That's that 1.5% that we were talking about. There is no changes, so that is just straight improvement. The front wing, though, we have the offsetting. We have a plus and a minus to this, but of course everyone's going to have that minus, and the other teams, their minus is going to be bigger than ours. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that it is going to impact other teams more so than it impacts us. But how much of it have we managed to cover off? Well, in terms of the front wing, the brake cooling, we've gained nearly 4%, so that's a positive. High-speed downforce, we are seeing a bit of a negative, though. We lose 1.5 tenths of a kilonewton. We lose just under 1/10 in the medium speed, and we're going to see a small gain in the low speed cornering. So we're going to be a little bit slower high speed. Of course, that's where the bigger impact was with that 30% decrease. Airflow sensitivity also gaining about 3.5%. I would say overall, to me, that front wing, that's coming out as a bit of a wash, right? We're seeing gains in 4 out of 6 areas. We're seeing a healthy loss in 1, a minor loss in 1, but only a minor gain in 1. I'd say that's about a net neutral. In the rear wing, high speed downforce, 0.12 lost, 0.02 lost in the medium speed. That's just about a net wash. Low speed, that's definitely a net wash, 0.01 gained, 4.5%, 6%, 4.5%. That is, well, I think these kind of offset the high speed downforce loss. So again, just about net neutral on the rear wing, maybe a tiny gain. No research projects for the side pods, but also no regulation change, so it's going to be the same. However, just at the end of the season, about 3 races prior to the end, a new side pod upgrade was complete. So there was one upgrade there very late in the year. On to the underfloor. The underfloor, 0.14 lost, net neutral on the medium speed, and the low speed, 0.02 lost. And then minor gains in the airflow sensitivity and the drag reduction of just under 4% each. That's almost a wash. I'd say overall of those 3 so far, I'm thinking we're net neutral, tiny gain, tiny loss, which means we're just about in the same place where we were. We're, for the most part, offsetting the technical changes. Suspension, nearly a 5% gain in cooling, 0.12 lost in high speed, 0.02 in medium speed, and 0.05 gained in low speed. Just about offsetting, plus that 4.5 to 4% everywhere else in gains. We've got 4.5 and a 4.04 in the drag reduction, meaning the suspension is maybe a slight net gain. So overall, those 4 parts, for the most part, I think we kind of offset the losses. Now, the high speed, we have not offset. We have probably gained a bit in low speed. We are very neutral in medium speed. We have lost in high speed, but then in those other areas, we have made gains. All in all, I think we have handled the minor technical regulation change in a, we are 1% better overall as a car than we were at the end of the year, despite some technical changes. We should see other teams maybe drop a little, so maybe that will give us a step in that right direction, being a little bit more competitive. But all in all, I think we're probably going to be right about where we left off at. When it comes to the engine suppliers, the trade-off between them is always, it's minor. The Red Bull powertrain, the Honda, come on, let's be real here. The Honda engine has the most power, but not by a massive, wide margin, but it definitely has the most power. And it's got a kind of healthy advantage over the others. But then there's trade-offs. Power loss threshold is much lower for the Mercedes, meaning you're not losing power until it's 35% worn. It takes quite a while before you're going to actually start losing power, which means you can run that engine at full power for longer. The Red Bull is going to start losing power much earlier, which means the advantage that it had when it was brand new doesn't last for very long until it backs off. At least in game, that's how it works, not in real life. But wear resistance is also better on the Mercedes, much better than the Red Bull. It's going to degrade much faster, and the threshold kicks in earlier. So it might have more power day one, but you need a new engine every race to be rapid all the time. Likewise, thermal resistance is best in the Mercedes. The fuel efficiency is similar between all. They're all pretty good. The Renault, that is definitely its best area, that and the wear resistance. You can definitely go a lot cheaper with the Renault engine than you can on the others. It has a number of advantages, but it has a couple disadvantages that just about set it off, that really kind of knock it down a peg or two. The gearbox durability is one of those keys, and the Renault way down at 40% means it just chews through gearboxes. That is where the Red Bull does have an advantage. However, it's a very minor advantage compared to the Mercedes, just 6% ahead. And then you get to the ERS durability, and again, this is where Red Bull lags way behind the rest. So it has those couple areas, a couple major weaknesses that they gave the Red Bull powertrain. The Renault has a couple advantages, but it's got too many weaknesses. The Ferrari, solid option. The Red Bull is a solid option, but it does have a couple major weaknesses, while the Mercedes, I think, is the most consistent of your options, except that it's technically the slowest. So it's got a glaring weakness to it, but the power loss threshold being really good, very helpful. It's going to keep it at that max power longer, where the others are getting knocked down to its level and or below. Also, that wear resistance. The engines are the most expensive component in your powertrain. $5 million to replace that engine. So that wear resistance of the Renault and the Mercedes, huge advantage. The thermal resistance as well helps with that. The fuel efficiency, not that big of a deal, right? It's a minor situation. They're all pretty good. Gearbox durability, two shine way above the rest. The Ferrari and the Renault are terrible on the gearbox durability. That's a major concern. And then, of course, finally, the ERS durability, again, two very, very weak, the Renault and the Red Bull. Mercedes not great at roughly 60%, but the Ferrari itself is only at 70, so it's not like it's astronomically ahead. Across the board, the best, most consistent for me is the Mercedes. It just lacks a little bit of that top speed. So we're going to stick with the Mercedes. Car comparison of the car that just finished the season versus the one that we are going to start the 2024 season with. And other than that high-speed cornering, we have made gains. So it's good. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. We gained 0.5 kilometer an hour in top speed. We gained a marginal, tiny acceleration boost, but our DRS effectiveness went up by 12%. Our low speed cornering went up by a fair bit. Our medium speed cornering slightly. That was, so it was right in assuming that it was about neutral, and it very much was. High speed very much took a dip, so we're going to have to focus on that early on in the season to recover what was lost. But again, that was the one that took the 30% loss. I don't think we're looking at a 30% loss here. I mean, we're looking at minor losses, and the other teams, their losses in high-speed cornering should be more pronounced, which means I think we're actually going to be in a better position compared to other teams than we were, hopefully. Dirty air tolerance also going up by almost 10%. Brake cooling going up by about 8%. Engine cooling also going up by about 4%. So gains in almost every area. I like it. I think we did well when it came to our research. Oh boy, that's substantial. That's not minor losses. We are talking about massive losses to our pit crew to start the new year. That's a lot to recover, and our ratings were not good to begin with. They are now, they're worse than Florsch's. So our pit crew is going to have a lot of work to do. Still the 1st of January, and just shy of 2 months until we have the first race of the season, and I have 4 upgrades already set up and started on the car. Now, of course, we have a limited number of engineers, we have limited facilities, limited gains that we can make, limited staff. It's all there. But we've spent $5 million already on an underfloor, a front wing, a rear wing, and a side pod upgrade, all on the way. Each of those in that descending order. More emphasis put on the one above the one below it, but we're looking at making some pretty solid gains. In particular, a couple of these upgrades I have focused on high speed, so we should recover what was lost and then some, and then just making other gains across the board, meaning we're going to be heading into the first race for sure with some upgrades, and all of these are going to be done in early February, which means we should have all of them onto the car before the first race. But that is all of our allocated wind tunnel time for this first period, so we'll be able to get some other upgrades on the go after this and spend some money on those as well. We need a fast car to be competitive at this point, but this is a great start to that prospect. Now, towards the end of the season, I did not work on the facilities as we were kind of banging the money and trying to get the car a little more competitive with the new plan that we had. And therefore, facilities, a lot of them are in poor condition right now. You could spend the money to refurbish, but then all you're getting back is what you had before, and then it's going to start degrading again right away. Or you can upgrade the facility. So we're going to start with like boardroom. Race confidence gain for us is going to be really important in maintaining our job with the objective that we've set, with the challenge that we've set, and therefore spending that $2.5 million is a very well spent $2.5 million. Forecast accuracy going up by 22% would be really helpful. Those wet races, we are having an absolute nightmare of a time trying to follow. Unlike last year, there really was very little variance in it. This year, you could see it. It's changing constantly over the course of a race. So in the operations facilities alone, I have 3 upgrades on the way, and I have 2 refurbishments coming. Hospitality area, the only one I'm not too worried about right now. That is team attractiveness. Not urgent to do anything with that. Weekly development of drivers, obviously that's a boost we really need, so we're going to go ahead and spend another $2.8 million. That's going to use up most of the funding we have right now. I'm going to hang on to that other $8 million as we go forward. We should have our turn of the month before the upgrade set is done, meaning we're not going to be spending a ton of money until next month. We'll have that extra $3 million at that point. But if we're going to have another round of upgrades, if we're going to be manufacturing all these parts, we've got to kind of sit back, sit on our hands a little bit at this point and save some money for that to happen if we're able to do it at once and not have to wait. On to the team driver updates, the roster updates. So Leclerc and Sainz still at Ferrari, Verstappen and Perez still at Red Bull, with Porsche taking up their reserve driver seat. Stroll and Alonso still at Aston Martin. Russell and Hamilton still at Mercedes. Ocon Gasly at Alpine. Magnussen Hulkenberg at Haas. Piastri, Norris at McLaren, Tsunoda, and Guan Yu Zhou at AlphaTauri. Bottas and Albon. There's the one driver change. So the one driver change, actually, is that twofold? Yes. So Zhou Guan Yu going into AlphaTauri ahead of De Vries. So De Vries is out, and Albon is the replacement. And then, of course, us losing Albon, bringing Florsch in. So it's De Vries with a 3-team kind of swap over, who's out with Florsch in. Gotti has not picked up a seat in Formula 3. We'll see if she even still remains as a free agent, or will we see a changeover in the pool. Also, confirmation that Logan Sargent is the lowest rated driver in Formula 1 at a 77, with Piastri at a 79, the next lowest rated. De Vries was a 78, and of course now a free agent, still 78. There is no change at this time to the driver's pool. So Franco Gotti remains as a free agent and the second lowest rated driver in the entire pool. Already noted that Sargent enters the season as the weakest driver on the Formula 1 grid. That is until you then get to his new teammate, Sophia Florsch, who is 21 points worse off. She's already had her first development tick, though, and gained in overtaking. Literally the last area we need to worry about. Overtaking is not going to be, and defending for that matter, are not going to be short-term needs at all. We need pace. Good and bad news, folks. Preseason testing, and this is where we're going to be leaving this episode off at. Preseason testing has, well, it's given us a mixed result. You're not dead last in anything, and therefore it's pretty okay. And we are damn good in one thing. And it's the funny thing, because it was the one that it was like, oh darn, we took a loss in high-speed cornering. I did mention not long ago that I felt like we'd covered it off pretty well, though, and that others maybe seeing a larger decrease and not have it covered off as well as we have. That's exactly what's happened. We are now third in high-speed cornering, but we are 13th or 15th pretty much everywhere else. And where we had been fairly decent in top speed last season, 9th, 10th, now all of a sudden we're 13th. So we have lost a bit of our top speed. I will need to add some focus onto that one as well. But it's really good to see that we have good high-speed cornering and that we have a tolerable car. It's not the worst, but we just don't know how varied is the field at this point, and I don't want to look that closely at the details because preseason testing, everybody's sandbagging, and you really shouldn't have. You should have an idea where you're at, but you shouldn't know exactly. So I don't want to know where Alfa Romeo is exactly compared to us at this stage in time. I still want to keep that mystery going on a little bit longer. Meanwhile, already mid-February, but down to that 6.4 million. So playing it safe, playing it cool. One more upgrade already happening. So 2 current designs that are in the process and now into the manufacturing element of our other earliest upgrades of the year. We're looking pretty okay. Pretty still back into the grid, but pretty okay. Logan Sargent, I am hoping he can beat a few drivers on a regular basis. Sophia Flörsch is going to be some ways off from having enough pace and or a quick enough car to make up the difference. That is going to do it for this episode, though. I'm glad that we're able to get back and going again with this series, and sorry about the hiatus on that one, but I'm really pleased to see where this update has taken us, including giving us the legit way to bring in Sophia Flörsch and help keep this series active and going and hopefully not experiencing bugs again like before. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there, and bye for now.